Hey guys, Alex from BoardGameCo over here, and today we're doing the very first video that's been selected by you guys. If you don't know, on yesterday's video, or 2 days ago, whatever it is by now, I had a poll up where you guys can pick which topic I would cover next, and by pretty much 2/3 majority, you guys picked games I haven't played in over a year, but I'm still keeping, and why. Now at the end of this video, there won't be a poll today because tomorrow's video, in case you want to know ahead of time, tomorrow's video is going to be another Kickstarter roundup covering a bunch of updates, as well as a bunch of other new Kickstarters that I haven't talked about yet. And then probably at the end of that one, we'll have a poll. We'll see, we'll play it out. But in any case, starting off the bat with number one, well, before we get to number one, let's talk about the basic premise of this video. There are a lot of games that I have about 250 plus games in my collection, and I play most of them often. I play around 700 games a year right now based on my tracking stats and whatnot. Now, not 700 unique games, 700 total plays. Now that does mean I can definitely get to a lot of those 250 games, but not all of them. And so something I'm always curious about is which games have I not played in a long time, and do I have to critically analyze whether to get rid of it or not? So in general, I tend to take a look at which games aren't seeing play, and in this case, these are the ones that aren't seeing play, and yet I'm still keeping them, and then thus leads into my own self-justification as to why this is an exception, as to why this is a good game. So for this list, what I did is I picked all the games that I haven't played in more than 15 months. Now you may be asking yourself, why 15 months if I just said a year? And the answer is because COVID-19. I gave myself a 3-month extra jump because a bunch of these games would have seen play, but we haven't been playing in person since everything got crazy, and we've been playing only online, which drastically limits our selection. So I did give myself an extra few months to account for the fact that our total game night dynamic has shifted and the games that will hit the table have shifted. But from there, starting us off at 16 months in, we had nothing in the 15-month category. At 16 months unplayed, we have Indian Summer. Indian Summer is a game by Uwe Rosenberg. It's part of his trilogy of Cottage Garden, Indian Summer, and Spring Meadow. It's a polyomino game, you can see over here. Nice little polyomino fitting things into there. And it's honestly a little surprising to me that I haven't played this, because I would say my favorite games in the polyomino universe would be probably Barren Park, then Indian Summer, then Isle of Cats. Now, Indian Summer does not get critical acclaim, don't get me wrong. I think I'm the exception in terms of how much I like it, but I find it to be one of the more strategic ones in terms of gauging the choices you have on the table and how to min-max around it. I find Spring Meadow and Cottage Garden a little too light, a little too whatever. Patchwork is great as a 2-player game. I find Barren Park the most accessible. Isle of Cats is beautiful, well-produced. Drafting I find a little lacking, but overall, I do really enjoy Indian Summer. I don't know why it hasn't hit the table, but it's definitely something I hope to fix, and something I hope to fix soon. This is an easy one to get to the table. I really should just get it to the table and call it a day. Next up, number 2 on this list, and I'm holding the expansion because it's easier and lighter, but Gloomhaven. I have not played Gloomhaven in 16 months as well. Now that one's more intentional. Something I talked about in my giant big roundup, not roundup, I did a video about the problem with epic campaign games, and Gloomhaven I use as the clickbaity title, but the problem with these games is that I find I often have to commit to playing them a lot, or I won't bother doing them at all. So I'll go through phases where I say I'm picking game X, I'm picking 7th content, I'm going to get through 3 or 4 games in the next, 2 weeks. And then that will kind of solidify the experience for me, and I'll lock those rules in, and it'll be much more rewarding to actually do that in chunks. Versus I don't like doing single play sessions of these games that aren't meant to be single play sessions. So Gloomhaven is a game that I played it for a few times. I played it 3-4 times when I first got it, around 16 months ago, 17 months ago, whatever it was. And then from there, what happened is I didn't have any plans to play it. Meaning, this was not a game that just hasn't hit the table. It hasn't been allocated as a game that I will ensure hits the table a lot and frequently. So the fact that it hasn't hit the table in 16 months isn't a problem for me. Will it hit the table in the next 12 months? I don't know. I certainly hope so. I kind of feel that it needs its own separate gaming table. I have a gaming table upstairs. I feel I need a separate gaming table dedicated to playing these epic sprawling games so I can knock them out of the park one at a time. Gloomhaven was a great experience when I played it. I hope to continue playing it, but it's in my collection because it's actually right behind me over there, but it's not a mistake that it hasn't been played, it just hasn't gotten to the table. Next on this list, again, it's 16 months since we played it last, is Concordia. Concordia is an excellent game by Matt Gertz. I've talked about it in a few other videos. Matt Gertz is a designer who's done a bunch of games I like, and one game that I want to give another try, which is, he's done Navigator, Concordia, Antique Duellum, Antique, which I all love, and then he's done Imperial, Imperial. He has other games as well. I'm just doing some of the more notable ones. He has done Imperial, which I did not enjoy, but I kind of want to give it a second chance. I want to see if my opinions changed over time. I played it a very long time ago. But Concordia is a game that I am disappointed has not hit the table. It's a game that it has actually been pulled off the shelf multiple times to be played in multiple situations in the past year, but each time something else got picked. Meaning multiple times I either brought it upstairs and said, hey, these are the 3 games we have an option, or I brought it to a friend's house when we were playing and said, here are the options on the table. Meaning it is a game that is constantly attempting to make its way into the rotation, and for whatever reason it hasn't until now. So it hasn't been played in a long time. But it's not for lack of trying. It's not for looking at the shelf and saying, you know, not in the mood today. So Concordia is definitely, I would say any game that I pull off the shelf in an attempt to play, even if it doesn't get picked, I'm cool with that. Because the way it works at game night, if I'm pulling the games, is I'm saying I'm happy to play any of these games. And then other people will vote and choose as well. But as long as I'm happy to play a game, as long as it's being selected by me, I consider it a win. The fact that it hasn't been played, unfortunate, but I will try to remedy that soon. It's really a great game. Concordia is an incredible game. Now we jump to 18 months with Lancaster Big Box. Well, Lancaster, but I happen to have the Big Box. Lancaster is a game that it took me far too long to actually explore, to try. It is by Matthias Kramer, and it is a brutally mean worker placement game. Brutally mean. The basic premise of the game is you have these knights. You start the game with 2 knights. You can escalate as the game progresses, but you're using these knights to try to take these areas on the board. And as with many games in this genre, it kind of feels like when you first taught the game, when you first learn the rules, it kind of feels like you'll never be able to do all the things you want. And then yet you kind of are able to do a lot of the things you want. But the part that is brutally mean is you're constantly knocking people out of spots. It's not pure worker placement from a stance of I go here and I lock in a move. Rather, I go here, and then you can use someone who has a stronger knight to knock me out. Or you can pay extra coins or something to push me out further. There are all these different options. I don't know if it's coins, it might have been something else. But anyways, there's options to knock people out of spots, shoving them back to their part, where they can then try to knock someone else out. And it's this game of little, almost whack-a-mole, of pushing people around and trying to lock in the things that will be most advantageous to you. And a lot of your moves will be done with the knowledge that someone will knock you out, and you're waiting for that because it buys you time, it buys you opportunity, it buys you seeing what's going to happen next. Lancaster is a phenomenally tight and mean and amazing game that hasn't hit the table in a while just because of the rotation. 18 months is pushing it. It definitely has not been a, 2 years kind of situation, and I imagine this will be played sooner rather than later. It is a game that when we first started playing it, we played it a bunch. We played it probably every other week for 2-3 months, and then we kind of took a break and we just haven't gotten it back to the rotation. But it is a game that, rest assured, this is going nowhere. This could be unplayed for the next 12 months and I would still keep it. It is an incredibly tight game, and I think the closest thing I have in my collection to it is Rurik, which I think it's a tough one. I think I prefer Lancaster. I'm not sure. Rurik is a great game, don't get me wrong. I've talked about it a lot, and it definitely ranked higher in my last year's top 20. But the more I play Rurik, the more I find it a bit samey. Versus Lancaster, I don't know if I feel that way about it, because of the laws and whatnot. I know Rurik does have an expansion coming at some point, so that might change things up a bit. But for right now, Lancaster is tight. Great game. Next up, again at 18 months, this one actually was in my top 20, Dogs of War. I think this makes the first game, this makes the first game from my top 20 of 2019 to show up in a list of games that hasn't been played in a long time. Dogs of War has not been played in a long time simply because of the player count, which is why it's not on the hit list in the slightest. Dogs of War is about backing the right armies. It's about backing the right forces. The players in the game are mercenaries trying to control basically trying to score the most points for yourself. And the way you can do that is through a variety of means, both through a kind of worker placement aspect, not really though, or alternatively just backing the right troops, backing the right units, the armies on the board. If you back the right side and that side wins, they gain influence, they gain points or whatever, you gain tokens, and you can score based off of a multiplier. But it is an incredibly well done. I would say, I just compared it to Imperial recently. In Imperial, I didn't compare it, but in Imperial, you are not actually the armies, but you're wrestling for control over armies. Dogs of War has a similar element, but for me it worked a lot better. I like Dogs of War a lot. The reason it hasn't seen play in so long is because it plays with 5, and I would say over the past year or so, our play group has shrunk a bit. Not significantly, but just enough that 5-player games are harder to get to the table. It is less often that we have a 5-player game, and that means the competition is just fiercer for that spot. That's the only reason it hasn't been played in a year, in 18 months, but it will hit the table again. Next up, again at 18 months, we have Notre Dame. And you know what? I might try to fix that in the next few weeks. Maybe I'll try to get this to the table. This is a game that plays well with 3, plays best with 3, I believe. And it is by Stefan Feld, who I always enjoy his games, but more so lately I've been on a Stefan Feld high just because a lot of his games are on Yucata, and I've been doing a lot of my gaming online with my game group on Yucata. We set up a Zoom session, we pick a game, we just go turn by turn through it while talking and playing the game. Now I've been playing a lot of Bruges, I've just started playing Oracle of Delphi again. Casa Burgundy is one that I play in person as well as online. His games in general I'm a big fan of. Notre Dame is one of the games that has been in my collection. He has like maybe 3 or 4 games that I've kept in my personal collection, although I've gotten a few back because of this Yucata binge. And Notre Dame is, well, fun, but Notre Dame is all about you're drafting cards. So offhand I like it because it's drafting, and those cards let you determine the specific actions or the specific boroughs in your neighborhood you're going to activate and try to escalate. And one of the things I love about this game is every time you activate a region, the next time you activate it, your activation is more powerful. You basically put a cube and you do something X times. The next time you put another cube, you do something X plus 1 times, and you keep doing that. You also have to manage where your cubes are coming from though, because if you run out of cubes, you'll have to start pulling them from other boroughs, thus weakening your region. It has an aspect of Architects of the West Kingdom, if you've ever played that, has an aspect of each time you put a guy down, your action gets stronger. This has that as well. I personally prefer Notre Dame. I really enjoy it, and because it plays best with 3, it's a game I can still get to the table in person, and I really should fix this 18-month gap as quickly as possible. Next we have Lord of the Rings, which is another game that I really should fix. I should really just knock these out and get them off my list so I don't have to look at them and feel shame and guilt. Lord of the Rings Confrontation is an excellent 2-player game that is basically Stratego if Stratego were good. Don't take offense if you like Stratego. This is my own opinion, my own whatever. I happen to not like Stratego at all. Of course there's strategy, but ultimately to me it's a lot of pushing and guessing and bluffing, and there's some strategy for sure. Don't get me wrong, I just think there are better games. And an example of that would be Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, it's in the game, you act out, the 2 players act out, one side acts out the Fellowship, one side acts out Sauron. Sauron has more strength in the game, which is thematic, but the Fellowship has more tactical maneuverability as you try to get Frodo from the Shire into Mordor with the ring. So that's what you're trying to do ultimately. You don't win by killing people, you win by getting Frodo to the Shire, Frodo to Mordor. And so it ends up being this phenomenal game of you have your pieces hidden, kind of like Stratego, where you have like the back to the other player, and you're moving them around the board as Sauron tries to figure out where Frodo is. Which of these characters that have the back to him is Frodo, and which of these does he have to pursue and get in order to kill him and win the game. It comes down to this tactical maneuverability with a little bit of fighting, just enough that that Frodo and the Fellowship has a chance, but really Sauron has the force and you're trying to outmaneuver him. Really well done, great 2-player game. Hasn't hit the table primarily because it kind of falls into this weird range of being a little lighter than super heavy 2-player games and a little heavier than lighter 2-player games. So it hasn't hit the table in a while just because of that, but really that's an easy fix that should be taken care of sooner rather than later. And that's been 20 months since I last played it. Next up is Ra, also at 20 months since I last played it. Ra is a game that I've mentioned in prior videos that I don't know. This is the only one on this list, I want to say. I would say this is 3. There's 3 games on this list that are actually potentially on the chopping block at some point. Ra is the first one of those. Ra is a game that it's ultimately a clean auction game. It's all about just laying out tiles and then bidding the way you think you need to in order to collect the sets you need and win the game. It is by Rainer Knizia. It is phenomenally well done. It is tight. It is the auction. One of the things I love about the auction mechanic is it's not purely a 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Rather, you have specific tokens, and you get 1 shot. You have 1 shot, make a count. You have you play the 12, and people can either outbid or not outbid. You don't get another opportunity. So do you go high to scare people away? Do you go low knowing people can outbid you and you don't get a chance to rebid again? I love that mechanic in Ra, and it does make it fairly unique, and it's why it's still my collection. The game itself is a little dry, which is one of the reasons it hasn't seen the table a lot. It's a little on the drier side, but it is one that I don't know, I wrestle with it a lot. It's one I constantly look at when debating whether to purge my collection, and if it doesn't get played in a long enough time, then it will go. That's the thing about this list. If I love the game and I know just hasn't hit the table for reason X, Y, and Z, that's cool. If it hasn't hit the table because every time I look at the shelf I pick something else, that is when the amount of time moves into, okay, great, I kind of have to get rid of you. And it doesn't always take 12 months. Sometimes it happens in 2 months. The more I like a game, the more I give it time before deciding, you know what, Con Marie, thank you for all the joy you've brought me. Great game, time to move on. Next up on this list with 20 months again, and this is a big one, Empire's Age of Discovery. This is one that has not hit the table because of the player count aspect. It can be played pretty well with 4. I really should play it with 4. There's just a lot of competition in that space. And playing with 5 is harder and harder because we don't have 5 players as often as I would like to. At least not in person. Online, I'm playing with all my friends who moved away, so it's even better. But anyways, Empire's Age of Discovery is a worker placement game. I just talked about it in my video about 10 games that are better than Risk. I'll link to that up above. But Empire's Age of Discovery it's not a typical Risk-like game. It's more about the worker placement, but there is an area of worker control and fighting that goes on. And it's Glendrovers. I don't know how to say this as quickly as possible because I don't want the video to go on too long. I love the game. I don't know how to say it better than that. I love the worker placement aspect. Worker placement games in general have been a harder and harder genre for me. More and more over time I find that they are great initially, but then I get rid of them. For right now, Empire's Age of Discovery I believe might be my favorite one. Gente's Deluxe actually is one that is kind of reverse worker placement. It's interesting, but I really do like that one as well. But anyways, back to Empires. Empires has not been played in a long time because it is a beast to teach. It's a beast to get to the table. Not the worst game to teach, but it has a combination of a higher player count and maybe at least 40 minutes of rules to teach. It can be condensed a little bit if you're really up to date, but there's a lot going on to explain to this game to new players. So without having the people who already know it, it's just harder to justify getting to the table. I should get it to the table, but I would say, like Dogs of War, if this doesn't get played, like Lancaster, if this doesn't get played in the next 2 years, I will still own it, I imagine. I'll let you know. You'll find out if I get rid of it. I do all these videos about games leaving my collection. Next on this list at 22 months is Steam. Steam I have no excuse for. This is the first one I just straight up I have no excuse. It's not because I don't like it. I do like it. It could be on my shelf for another year and I'll still keep it. It is a game by Martin Wallace, who I went through a phase where I loved all of his games, kind of like I went through Stefan Feld and Uwe Rosenberg. I've gone through different phases where I loved certain designers and got all of their stuff before, over time, condensing down to the ones I liked the most. And for Martin Wallace, Steam definitely falls into the category of his games that I like the most, or at least based on the last time I played it, which has been 22 months ago. Steam is all about railway building and building connections on the board, and honestly I don't remember as much about it as I should. I don't remember, you're trying to optimize these routes where you deliver cubes to different areas, and you have to build the most efficient route so that the cubes get delivered through your trains. It is a game that I really need to get to the table again. What I really need to do is I need to read the rules, break it out, and get it to the table. It's been long enough, I just don't remember how to play. I remember the basics, I remember the tiles on the side, I remember the putting tiles on the board. It is one of my favorite Martin Wallace games, and yet I don't play it. So that's really on me. I apologize to myself, to Martin Wallace, and to any of you guys who like Steam. I think it's a great game, just needs to be played. Next on this list at 23 months is 1775. We have 2 more after this. This is the third last one. 1775 is the second one of the categories that I don't know if it will be staying forever. I don't know. Actually, I take it back. I don't know why I'm saying that. Forget that. There's only 2 on this list that I'm saying that. And forever is a long term. I just mean, I don't have any doubts about this. I don't know. I think I was thinking of 1754, which is the one I'm not sure if I'm keeping. I'm keeping one of these for sure, whichever one I think is better. I don't know if I'll keep both. And for those who don't know, they're similar games, same genre, kind of like having 2 different Ticket to Ride maps. They're similar without being the same. But 1775 is a great 2 to 4 player game, 2 or 4 player I would argue, because you really want to play this in teams. You will either want a 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2, which leads to why it hasn't been played in a long time, which is I don't like it as a 1 versus 1. I think it's okay, but I really like the planning and the discussion that goes into playing it as a 2 versus 2 game. But it needs a specific 2 versus 2. It needs specific players who are into this kind of game, which is purely tactical. In my group, we have exactly 4 people who would be good for this game. But you need exactly those 4 people at game night, and you need to choose this and nothing else. In my game group, we have roughly 9 people or so, but it rotates in and out, and we have 3 or 4 regulars. It has been hard to get 1775 to the table purely because we need specific people, and we only have 4 of them that I think this game is a good fit for. Others are either not as into this genre, don't like the dryness, aren't good at team games. We have some people in our group that just aren't good at team games. They always want to do their own thing. They don't want to work as a team, and that can ruin any team play experience. 1775 is an amazing game that the only reason it has not gone to the table is because of the player dynamic. And that is why this can stay on this list for however long, I don't really care, and I'm fine with it. It's also a game that has like a 3-page rulebook. It's really easy to teach. It's one of those games when I first learned it, I was confused why this game was so good, and it just was. Next up, at 27 months, and I'll get a lot of flack for this, is Rising Sun. Rising Sun is the second game on this list that I don't know if it'll stay forever. Not because it's not good. We played it a bunch of times when I first got it. When it first came out, we played it a bunch. I was super excited about it. I loved Blood Rage. I was psyched for playing Rising Sun, seeing how it played out, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not that it was bad, not in the slightest. But I find that other games in the genre I like more. There were aspects of Rising Sun that I didn't enjoy. I would say offhand, I didn't enjoy the battle mechanic of I felt more. I find, let's say when you compare Kemet. Kemet has this aspect of strength, attack, and defense, which I find works really well. This had an aspect to the battle where you're kind of choosing which of the 3 regions you want to win, and it kind of felt a little bit more like a bluffing luck game. It didn't feel as tactically challenging as I would like. It felt more just, we'll see how it plays out, hope for the best. Additionally, there was this aspect to the game where your giant monster can just be easily destroyed just because one person's killed, which kind of felt a little annoying. Now, don't get me wrong, I have not played this game enough to be able to talk about all the counterpoints to those. Ultimately, Rising Sun is a game that I thoroughly enjoyed. Rising Sun is a game that I have tried to get to the table in the past 27 months. It's not like it has just sat there on the shelf. A bunch of times I've read the rulebook, suggested it for game night, hasn't been played. But it's also one that I kind of want to, it falls into the category in my head of, I want to play it more to see where it lands. Not I want to play it more because it's the best game ever, which many of these other games are. When I talk about Concordia, I just want to play it more because it's an amazing game. When I talk about Rising Sun, I want to play it more to see whether I will think it's better, worse, middle, whatever. So it is a little bit on the hit list, but not significantly so. We'll see how that plays out over time. That's 27 months out. That's 2.5 years, guys. That's a long time. And finally on this list, we have Chaos in the Old World at 36 months. It has been 3 years since I played this game. I apologize in advance to every single person on this video, watching this video. I apologize to all of you who have commented on my top 10 games better than Risk video, mentioning Chaos in the Old World. And yes, it was on the short list. The reason I took it off is purely because I hadn't played this game in 3 years, and I don't know where it stands if I played it again right now. I don't know how it holds up because it's been so long. Sometimes when I play a game 3 years ago, my standards and tastes are so different, and when I play it again today, I'd be like, you know what? I actually think Game X did it better, or Game Y did it better, and I no longer feel the need to own this. But for right now, I really want to get this to the table. The only reason I haven't, and this excuse has lasted for 3 years now, and I really need to stop, is it's a long rule book, and it's been long enough since we played it, that it's just, I need to get my head in the game. I need to read the rule book. I need to have 4 people locked in advance. Too often, our game nights are kind of, we get the final player count the day of. And I'm not reading the rule book for Chaos of the Old World the day of. I'm not reading it today in the chance that it'll be played in the next month and a half. And especially during pandemic, I'm definitely not reading it right now. So this game's going to continue sitting on the shelf unplayed for right now. But I need to fix that. I need to have dedicated players to play this game, because everything I remember about this game is how incredible it was. I remember this being just such a fun, asymmetric, but not even asymmetric to the point where it's hard to teach. Just enough asymmetry that every faction truly does feel unique, but they're mostly playing the same. It's not like Root where they're drastically different win conditions. There are subtleties to the differences, but they're overall, it's just, I don't know, man. This is Eric Lang's, I would say, Blood Rage is my favorite game of all time, as you guys know, at least for now. But this and Blood Rage are both amazing games in this genre. Kind of makes Eric Lang's a very interesting designer. Lots of things, from anything from Munchkin Dungeon right over here to Blood Rage and Chaos in the Old World. Very interesting guy. Tons of different experiences or designs under his belt. But ultimately, Chaos in the Old World is a game that I really need to get to the table. And I know. I'll listen. At a certain point, maybe I'll start putting votes out, and you guys can vote which games I play next, any of that stuff. I'll have to commit to it, of course, which is the tricky part. But I do want to play Chaos in the Old World. I hope you enjoyed this list. That's a bunch of games. These are all the games that I have not played in, I guess, 15 months plus. There was one other, which I didn't put on this list, called, well, not called, Azul. And Azul I didn't put on this list because it's been lent out for the past 10 months. So that's a bit of an exception there, because I just haven't had the opportunity to play it, so it doesn't get, I took it off this list. It was at 16 months, I believe, but it's been gone since the past 10 months. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know how many games in your collection do you keep that you haven't played in over a year. Like I said, I have 250 plus games, and these are all the games that I haven't played in a year, 15 months. I gave myself that bump. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm always interested in what your collections look like. I know what mine looks like, but yours is very different. Until next time, I am Alex from BoardGameCo. Like I said, next up tomorrow morning, we will have a video on a Kickstarter roundup, and from there, we will see what happens next. Have a good one.